and gentlemen, good day. I'm very glad to be able to participate, albeit only virtually, in this dialogue with Singapore on what remains the defining challenge of our time, climate change. We live a difficult situation. The health crisis caused by the pandemic is affecting all our countries, and the road to exiting this crisis is still long. Nevertheless, the climate crisis will not wait for us to have overcome this health crisis. It continues to advance, and it requires our action already in the short term. There's no need to dwell too much on the impact we've seen. The past 5 years were the warmest on record. Global average temperature has increased already by 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels in 2019. The impacts are beyond dispute, and Europe is actually the fastest warming continent. The average increase in Europe has already reached 1.6 degrees, and the world that we are going to face in the next few decades is a world which is much more difficult than the one we live in or we are accustomed to. That is one of the reasons why the President of the European Commission has made European Green Deal our top political priority. Priority to transform the EU into a fair and prosperous society with a modern, resource-efficient and competitive economy, which is at the same time climate neutral at the latest by 2050, as our leaders agreed to do at the end of last year. And we have submitted this pledge to the United Nations as Europe's long-term strategy under the Paris Agreement. Today, in spite of the crisis that we are facing, we should not only maintain our climate ambitions, but double down on them. The Green Deal is also Europe's growth strategy, and it is also our roadmap out of this crisis. It's a lifeline to a better future. The recovery from this crisis is a necessity, but it must be green to avoid us being locked into a fossil fuel economy for decades to come, given how long industrial investments last. And that's why our recovery package, Next Generation EU, together with the next multi-annual budget of the European Union, with a combined weight of 1.8 trillion euro, will support our climate neutrality objective. 30% of the overall expenditure and 37% of the national recovery and resilience plans will have to be climate related, and the entire budget will have to respect the principle of do no harm in terms of our climate objective. At the same time, we are now focused on increasing our 2030 targets and submitting a more ambitious, nationally determined contribution under the Paris Agreement before the end of this year. Our current legislation, ambitious as it is, would only see the EU achieving a 60% reduction of greenhouse gas emissions by 2050 relative to 1990 levels. This is clearly not compatible with our objective to become climate neutral by 2050 and the collective commitments we have all taken under the Paris Agreement. Therefore, increasing our target for 2030 to a reduction of at least 55% greenhouse gas emissions as compared with 1990 is a necessity for Europe. This will give us a more gradual path towards climate neutrality. It will give us a better alternative to facing even steeper reduction in 10 years' time. It will give our industry more certainty on the path to climate neutrality, would help them avoid investing in stranded assets, will give them the certainty they need to invest in the long-term future of our continent. Zero or very low carbon technologies and business concepts must be developed and tested at scale in the course of this coming decade. There are long lead times in crucial sectors such as land use and transport, and they require action in the short term to produce the results when we want them to come in 2030 and afterwards. We cannot afford to create a situation where after 2030 we would have to change again in unrealistically fast fashion. The Commission has concluded this on the basis of a deep analysis which will not only concerns how can we become climate neutral, but also how can we stay competitive, how can we modernize our economy, how can we make EU business and industry global trailblazers in green technologies. We also at the same time need to improve the resilience of the European economy, improve the well-being of EU citizens, and deliver the significant co-benefits in terms of health, improved air quality, and reduce environmental degradation that this strategy will bring along. The last element of this package is that we also need to ensure an inclusive transformation based on a just transition, leaving no one behind. In the word of Executive Vice President Frans Timmermans, the transition will be just, or there will be just no transition. And to deliver these objectives, we are including specific measures to support the transition. We have to support the low-income households in terms of their possibly increased energy bills by reducing the fuel cost and supporting a wave of renovation in the building sector. We have set out a just transition mechanism which will mobilize at least 150 billion euros to alleviate the socio-economic impacts of the transition on regions, industries and workers where carbon-intensive industry are most important. Now, what about our foreign partners? EU and Singapore are partners in many areas, and they can and must be partners in climate action as well. Singapore, like the EU, has invested in the future. Singapore has committed over $100 billion in relief measures post-COVID, and all efforts should be made to ensure that these funds support a green transition. And like the EU, Singapore has recognized that COVID-19 has not lessened the urgency of the climate crisis, and it has submitted its updated nationally determined contribution and its long-term strategy to the UNFCCC under the Paris Agreement earlier this year, at the height of the pandemic. We commend Singapore for this very timely action and this very good example to other parties under the Paris Agreement. Combined, EU and Singapore account for less than 10% of global emissions. Neither of us can stop global climate change alone. But there are many things that we can do together to facilitate the rapid transition to a prosperous net zero society around the world. We should continue to lead by example and foster multilateral rules-based cooperation. We should align finance with our climate goals, and we can both act as members of the International Platform on Sustainable Finance. We should step up the support for the decarbonization of industrial sectors and promote promising decarbonizing technologies at all levels of research and development, and ensure an international level playing field around new sustainable technologies such as renewable hydrogen, advanced solar and wind, batteries, carbon capture and storage. In a nutshell, we must, and we are among the few who are capable of, providing a working model of what a clean, decarbonized, but modern, competitive and prosperous economy and society can look like. In conclusion, all this requires careful planning and ambitious policies. Business and investors must play their role, and they can adapt, and they can play their role, but they need from policymakers certainty and predictability. And we are obliged to give it to them. To this end, the Commission proposed a climate law to set EU 2050 climate neutrality and the intermediate 2030 target in legislation to make them binding, irreversible, and give the clearest possible signal to guide investment decisions, and we are confident that Council and Parliament, our co-legislators, will agree on this legislation soon. Over the course of the coming 9 months, we will review our key EU climate and energy legislation to match our increased 2030 ambition. This will involve a reinforced and expanded use of emission trading, better energy efficiency measures, better renewable energy policies, and we hope and trust that the co-legislators will also agree to this legislation very soon. Ladies and gentlemen, the last word is an encouragement to cooperating. Singapore is one of our key partners in trade, in world relations, is a key member of ASEAN, a very dynamic region with whom we want and need to enhance our cooperation. I'm very happy to have been able to contribute to this event, and all the best for the continuation of your work. Goodbye.